Weng.
Mr. Speaker, sir, based on the Land Transport Master Plan 2040, cycling plays a key role towards a car-light Singapore. However, as more cyclists take to the road, there has been an increase in hostility between cyclists and motorists and even pedestrians. The proposed amendments to the Road Traffic Act would require power-assisted bicycle riders to pass a theory test. This is before they can ride their power-assisted bicycles on the roads or on the pavements. The amendments are aimed at making the roads and pavements safer for everyone. Many members today have spoken on cycling. The conduct of cyclists on the roads have been a topic of frequent, sometimes intense debates on social media. In the course of policy making, we need to take into consideration the views of the cyclists as well as other road users. Ultimately, we want safety for all road users. Since we have identified cycling as an important element in our move towards a car-light nation, we cannot and should not relegate cyclists to the pavements. But cyclists must take on more accountability. Their behavior, decisions, and actions can give rise to accidents. I have 4 recommendations to promote safe and responsible cycling. First, Mr. Speaker, sir, we must work on creating more dedicated cycling lanes. Many cities around the world, including Singapore, are experiencing a cycling boom since the COVID-19 pandemic started. This is largely driven by anxiety over shared and closed spaces on board public transportation and a heightened interest in outdoor exercise. I'm glad to hear last week that LTA is considering converting sections of roads as well as removal of roadside parking spaces to make way for cycling tracks. This has been successfully done in Paris. The city saw a massive commuter shift to bicycles during the pandemic. Paris is a bustling metropolis with existing buildings and infrastructure in place, very much like Singapore. Yet the authorities were able to swiftly create many new cycling lanes within months. They accomplished this by converting about 150 kilometers of roads to cycling lanes. New cycling infrastructure will take years, even decades, to complete if they are to be built from scratch. I therefore urge our government to consider this initiative seriously. It would be helpful if the cycling community can be involved and to assist the LTA to identify routes where dedicated cycling lanes can be created. Mr. Speaker, sir, my second proposal is to have clearer regulations on cycling. Let me cite an example. From LTA enforcement reports, I understand there is an offence to cycle against traffic flow. However, this is not immediately obvious to all cyclists. There is no explicit statement about cycling against traffic flow in Section 3 of the Highway Code, which is widely assumed to be the only piece of law that governs conduct on the roads. Nor is there anything on LTA's website about cycling on roads. Unless someone is a lawyer or works in LTA, one might not be aware that there may be multiple sources of the law relating to cycling. Some cyclists therefore may break the rules because they are genuinely uninformed. Others may exploit the lack of clear information and do as they please. This creates confusion and dangerous situations on the roads. A suggestion would be to further enhance the Road Traffic Act, specifically to ensure that the Act is explicitly clear that it covers cyclists the same way as it does for motorists. Once that is achieved, we can then work on raising awareness that the law applies equally to cyclists as well. Mr. Speaker, sir, my third proposal is to implement common traffic education and road safety regulations for cyclists and motorists. For example, motorists should be educated on the hand signals that cyclists use so that the intentions of cyclists are clear to motorists. Another recommendation is for cyclists to take a theory test like a CPR qualification before they can go on the roads. I note with concern that there is a divergence between recommendations within the cycling community and the guidelines for cyclists on LTA's website. For example, LTA's website states that cycling 2 abreast is allowed on non-single lane roads and on bus lanes outside their operational hours. However, many people, including cyclists, believe that cycling should always be done in a single file. In fact, the Highway Code requires cyclists to ride in a single file where possible. Divergence results in one side assuming that the other is not compliant, thereby resulting in conflicts. We should align guidelines and recommendations for cyclists on the roads. We should avoid referring to road traffic rules as guidelines or as a code. This is to avoid any ambiguity as to their applicability. They should be clearly stated as laws to be adhered to be included in common road user education and theory tests. And if these rules are broken, the offenders should be brought to task. Mr. Speaker, sir, my last proposal is for authorities and the courts to reconsider how well-established legal concepts such as the burden of proof, causation, and duty of care should apply to incidents on the roads involving cyclists. On one hand, in cycling-friendly cities like the Netherlands, Sweden, and Germany, the concept of presumed liability is practiced. This means that in an accident, the burden of proof is shifted from the more vulnerable road user like a pedestrian or cyclist to the driver of motor vehicles such as cars and lorries, which are capable of causing more impact. This rule does not automatically abolish faults or impose liabilities over any single party. The accused may still disprove claims of fault in court. Legislating for presumed liability may indeed help accelerate the progress of Singapore as a car-like nation. With the sheer amount of existing conflict between cyclists and motorists in Singapore, imposing a similar law may now widen the rift, but it's certainly something we should consider as part of improving safety and responsibility amongst users of shared roads. On the other hand, the concept of duty of care in common law already requires a driver, and indeed all road users, to adhere to a reasonable standard of care when using the roads. What this means is that even if it was possible for motorists to show that it was the cyclist that caused the accident, the motorists would find it a lot more difficult to show that they have not breached their duty of care. What if this was not the case? What if liability for a traffic accident involving a cyclist can be decided simply by causation? Simplifying how fault is determined in a traffic accident could lead to road users becoming more self-aware of their own conducts on the roads. This can reduce reckless behavior and make roads safer for everyone. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to seriously consider the above proposals to improve road safety and the accountability of road users. But ultimately, the motorist versus cyclist situation will never improve if we do not change our attitudes about each other to be more gracious and accommodating on the roads. The me-first culture on our roads must stop. Every road user, motorists, cyclists, or pedestrians, has a personal responsibility to reshape our road safety culture. Be kind, be patient, and be considerate to one another. In doing so, we can improve road safety in Singapore. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the bill.